very excited this evening that not only for parents as partners are we going to have the opportunity to do our usual 6 times a year school information and bringing you up to date on those things that are going on, have gone on, will go on, but we also this evening are going to have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Judd in regards to safety. That will be our special presentation tonight. And we also will have performances by our students. So many of you in the audience right now, you know a lot of those performers. They are our performers, our students from our various clubs, both the creative writing and the performance club, as well as from our Spanish 2 class. So please stay tuned for that. At this time, I would like to ask anyone who's joining us remotely through the live streaming, if you have not already, please go ahead and type in the name of the Clark student along with a parent or guardian name so that we do know how many are participating tonight. I also want to just lay it out a little bit more clearly that the first 30 minutes is going to be our Parents as Partners meeting with lots of very valuable information for you. That's the green agenda, so we will go over that in just a little bit. And then after that, we would invite everyone to stay for the performances, which should take about an hour and a half. Within that time, we will have the student music performances. We will also have some skits and then a full-blown play from our Spanish group. There will be an intermission as well throughout that time. I'm saying this mainly for those of you out in TV land, once we have finished with the Parents as Partners segment, we are going to stop the live streaming just to bring that piece to a close. We're going to take just a few minutes to turn things over, and then Mr. McCrory is going to start a brand new live streaming. So again, I'm speaking to mainly those of you who are out there watching remotely. We are going to take that short break at the end, just a few minutes, turn things over, and have you rejoin the live streaming for the student performances. Before we get into keeping our students safe, which is actually what we do all the time, I want to just draw your attention to the green agenda that you have. Some of you are very regular at our Parents as Partners meeting, and so again, I thank you and welcome you back. Others, we're very excited that perhaps tonight's student performances and/or Dr. Judd's safety presentation are the reason that you're here. So I want to share with everybody that we, as always, are extremely grateful for all of the donations that keep coming in, whether it be the breakfast that are provided, the snacks that are provided, the little cards of appreciation and gratitude. We are so thankful for all of that, and it is what keeps us going. The exam schedule for May is on the back of your program, and you can also access that online. So please take note that dual enrollment exams are starting. Some have already started. By the end of next week, they will be wrapped up, dual enrollment. But then most of what you see on the back of the green agenda has reference to the state testing and the high school exams that are going on. Clark enrollment, we have already sent out our conditional acceptance letters, as well as letters to students who are on our waiting list. We have heard back from over 60 students as of today. That leaves about 20 students who we have not heard from, and we do have students on the wait list. So as of now, we've had 2 students tell us they no longer want their seats. That happens. And so we've been able to already take 2 people from our wait list and move them up. So just giving you an update that we are well on our way to maintaining our 250 student enrollment for the coming school year. Ice Cream Social, for which we will be looking for a few volunteers, for new students is Tuesday, May 18th, and that'll start at 5 o'clock throughout the school building so that we spread people out. And many of your young people who are involved in different clubs may be asked to represent that club. So please stay tuned for information on that. I see Mrs. Bartnick is here. I'm going to invite her to come on up to the podium to give you some information about the opportunities and the outlooks. Karen Bartnick is our volunteer coordinator. She is the mother of a senior, so this is the last meeting for Parents as Partners, but we'll continue to thank you for all that you do, Mrs. Bartnick. Thank you.
I forgot my mask. I have to go back and get one. I would like to thank you all for everything you do to help. It makes my job very, very easy. And then just a few things that are coming up. We're going to have our volunteer appreciation April 30th at 10 a.m. So mark it on your calendar. Invitations will be coming soon. And then our teacher appreciation is May 3rd to the 7th. I just sent out a sign-up genius with the different things that we could use. We're going to have a lunch May 4th. Snacks are being provided May 5th. Breakfast is being provided May 6th. We're going to stuff the teachers' mailboxes each day with just a little surprise. So if you would like to volunteer for that, that would be great. And then we're also going to give them on the last day a gift certificate or a small gift. So we're accepting donations for that. And I think that's it right now. So I thank you again for everything you've done for Clark and making my job very easy. Thank you.
And as always, if there's ever a faculty or staff member who you would like to recognize on behalf of Parents as Partners, you are all so generous in each month having the opportunity to affirm a staff or faculty member here, going over and above a star right here at our school, because those people get the traveling crane that goes from classroom to classroom, office to office, cubicle space to cubicle space, and they also get a gift card. So thank you from all of us here at Clark to Parents as Partners for that. At this time, I'm going to turn over the mic to Dr. Leslie Judd, as she will tell us all about how we keep our students safe. Thank you, Leslie.
All righty, let me get situated up here. Thank you to everybody that's here online or in person. I'm so excited to have in-person audiences again. I'm not good at talking to a camera. I'm just not. I like faces, I like reactions, so yay. I'm gonna roll right into some really important safety information. The good news is that I'm not probably gonna say the word COVID again in my presentation, because that is not the piece of safety we are focused on tonight. It's a very important piece, not my piece tonight. Instead, we're going to talk about, I'm the school safety coordinator as one of the hats that I wear. I take that role very seriously. I kind of got my first experiences with safety because during college I interned, and then fresh out of college I worked through the prison and correctional system. That's kind of my initial expertise area, etc., even though it was in the mental health world in the prison system. Did that for many, many, many years, then started working in schools. So here I am, but I got to bring what I learned 20 plus years ago, starting in the prisons, and sadly have to apply a lot of it to being here in a school now, because we all know that lots of tragedies, too many tragedies, have happened that bring us here. So at orientation, you know, I throw out there all sorts of stuff about safety, but your brains are exploding because we throw a lot of information at you that night. So I go through a lot of training to make sure that I know and that I can, again, share the necessary information to keep everyone here safe. Of course, our students, but then also my coworkers. We need to all be safe when we're here on campus, emotionally and physically. Tonight, I'm going to talk mostly about that physical safety piece based on some recent training with the Secret Service where they've looked at averted attacks. So know that this is pretty targeted. I could go, and this is probably, I've condensed probably a good 40, 50 hours worth of training into, I'm going to try to get us through it in like 20 minutes. So please know that there's a lot more information out there available. If you really want to drill down on some stuff, get a hold of me. And the one thing in safety that we've learned since Stoneman Douglas is that there's no secrets. Open communication is key, and anything I know, I will share with you. So with that, first question, why should we care? Because we all sit here going, I've never known anyone in a school shooting, I've never known anyone to be a school shooter. It hasn't happened or affected me, other than what I see on the news, which hopefully affects all of us at some level. And if I asked you, and please don't raise your hands, think in your mind, do I think my child could be the next school shooter? Do I think a friend of my child or a relative of mine could be the next school shooter? And most people in our mind are probably going, of course not. Not my child, right? Now ask yourself again, don't raise hands, but is your child a child of divorce? Face any type of mental health issues? Use any substances, even just vaping or just marijuana? Had a drop in grades? Doesn't want to go to school anymore? Has been in any kind of trouble with law enforcement or in school? Been bullied, teased? So again, think about your answers to those questions, and that's going to come up in the program ahead. So just to lay a little foundation, what we're looking at again tonight is the Secret Service and many task force have been able to study 67 between the dates of 2006 and 2018, 67 plots to conduct a school attack that were averted. We've learned a ton from the attacks that occurred. This was a chance to look at all of those, 67 of them, where they had enough information that were able to be stopped before we had 67 more tragedies. Just to make sure it's real clear, this isn't, I posted online, I hate school and I want to blow it up. And boom, that was it, we've moved on. These, by definition, and again, I'm going to not get too deep in the weeds with you, but had to have been a current or very recent K-12 student, so they took out colleges and other shootings, purposefully had weapons in their plan in order to cause physical injury or death of at least one other student or school employee in or the immediate property of the school while targeting and advance one or more specific or random students, okay? So these 67 had very concrete plans. This wasn't a passing whim. The other thing that I want to refer to is that we are going to talk about plotters. That's those 67. We're not going to necessarily talk about the 41 attacks that were carried out that resulted in at least one death on a K-12 school campus between 2008 and 2017. Although the attackers, which is how they're referred to in the reports, have very similar characteristics many times to the plotters. But we're going to talk about plotters. So, remember those questions I asked you. Now I'm going to introduce you again to Nicole. Nicole's a student in Maryland in 2017. A few characteristics, and I know my people at home can see it on the screen. But if you're reading along, she sounds like a whole lot of my senior class sitting right now. Right? Seems like a great kid. Some of you are thinking in your mind, sign me up. Nicole's father, and I will tell you this is why we're sitting here tonight with me speaking to parents. Nicole's father noticed a change in her behavior. So she was seeing a counselor, had some depression, was seeing him off campus, hadn't sought out anything through the school. Nicole missed a couple counseling appointments, started getting a little defiant at home. So Dad said, something's not quite right, and searched her room and found her journal and said, something's definitely not right, and didn't sit on the information. Went to the school, who said, definitely not okay, and went directly to law enforcement. Again, we could do a very long training on each case of the averted attacks, of which this ends up being one. She was planning it, it was pretty deep. Again, the details are all here, it's all public record, I'm not sharing any secrets with you. She was able to acquire shotgun ammunition, materials for pipe bombs. She had the school's emergency plans, so she knew exactly what she needed to do and where certain people were stationed, etc. And Nicole was a criminal justice student, remember? And so she, because she's a good kid, she's an honors kid, she had chats with the SRO and talked about, hey, what would we do? You know, what would you do if somebody did this? I'm writing a report for my class. And so she got a lot of information. Her goal, and she made it very clear, is that you don't hear about female school shooters, right? She wanted to be the first. So she wanted to make a name for herself. And that's one of those things we'll talk about. Had a very intricate plan of how she would start at an elementary that was very nearby to her high school, so they would be, first responders would all be distracted there to give her very easy access at her high school. And again, carried out how she planned for it to end, which was with her own life ending. This is what they found, that she had legally acquired at 18, excuse me, she was 18. So the end of this story is crisis was averted. Maryland came down very heavy on her because even after getting psychiatric evaluation, etc., she is locked into, if she was let out the door, nobody was going to stop this plan in some way or fashion. So Maryland took it very serious. And she's now 20 years in prison, 5 years of supervised release, and banned from all learning institutions. So, what do we need to know? And Nicole's case has been in every training I've attended of why parents need to know this information and need to be made aware. As the Secret Service director said, the bottom line, bystanders save lives. So what you're going to see is every single one of these attacks was averted because somebody, primarily parents and peers, spoke up and said something's not right. So that's what we're here to talk about. What might be those flags? Again, this is all condensed from the Secret Service report that was just released, I feel like it was in March of this year. And just to talk about prevention, education, communication. Those are the things, because we don't ever want to get to the crisis. So who are our bystanders who are going to save lives? It's everybody sitting online, everybody sitting in this room, and everybody that you're going to go and talk to about this presentation tonight. Those are the bystanders. And trust me, staff has already gotten to hear all of this, and they continue to hear. We do a lot of staff training around this. So, education. We can address almost everything that was known and learned from these reports through doing prevention things, which we'll talk about, educating. We're here now. We talk with our students about these things regularly. We talk with our staff about these things regularly, and anyone who knows me in my personal life knows this is a passion of mine, and they get to hear about it too. Who needs to know this information? Absolutely everyone. Again, when it comes to safety, there are no secrets. That's how we stay safe, because there are no secrets. So here's a little bit about what we've learned, and again, where we can prevent. There's always a motive, there's always a reason. What they've learned from either talking to the kids or through their journals or through what they post online, what they've shared with friends, etc., is that nearly 3/4 of them, there was a specific target that they were aiming for. Sometimes more than one specific person, because they had some type of grievance. And in about half of those grievances were related to feeling bullied or teased. And then the reasons outside of grievances and having a specific target is just that notoriety, like Nicole, that desire to be known for this crime, to have fame, because unfortunately, active shooters, active killers do get some level of fame, you know? And then the last piece, some of them, and this is actually fairly rare, actually were exhibiting psychotic symptoms at the time, not just were depressed or we had a bad day. These were actively diagnosable psychotic symptoms. At least one of the averted attacks was because the therapist observed the psychiatric crisis and reported the student. So, again, here's the education. This is what we know. Look at this pie graph. The biggest piece of the puzzle is that peers reported what was happening. The next biggest chunk is family, followed by other adults outside of school. So only about 10% was it within the school that these things were first noticed and reported in order to stop the attacks. So what does that mean? Parents and peers are critical in communicating these things. This is that mantra of see something, say something. And so often in families, we're like, oh, I don't want my kid to look bad. Maybe I'm overreacting. It could be nothing. Isn't this what all teens talk about, post about, read about, search about? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yeah. The majority of times, yeah. But in a handful of cases, no. And I would always rather say, pretty typical. We ran it through threat assessment team. Don't see these big risks and worries, and thanks for reporting it, and let's keep in touch. That's usually the way it goes. But if you don't speak up, we have no idea what's happening behind closed doors that could prevent a tragedy. And again, 94% in some way blatantly communicated what their plans were. They tell you. They tell you. They tell us. We need to listen. A lot of it was, again, the communication through social media, journals, video game chats. There's a lot of ways to hide these conversations, but their peers all know how to get there. Parents, if you're not savvy enough to get in there and check on those things, get them to teach you. Lots of ways to learn. Law enforcement does some great trainings. The sheriff's office, I know, does some parent, how to kind of crack the code on some online stuff and make sure that you can dig in and learn more. And often they would warn their friends, hey, don't come to school. Or in one of the cases, it was, hey, they told their group of friends, wear bright pink. That way, you know, if they started shooting, if they saw their friend in bright pink real quick, they would know not to aim that way. And then here's the other big piece. They all got their weapons from the home. Almost all of them acquired the weapons in their home. Sometimes when they were locked up in nice little gun safes with codes and all sorts of ways you think my child has no access. So, the one thing I want to, and I'm going to read it a couple times for you, because we're going to talk about some common factors, and you're going to start hearing your answers to those questions I asked you at the beginning. So let me read to you. There is no profile of a student attacker, nor is there a profile for the type of school that has been targeted. So we can't say, this is not a checklist when I go through commonalities to say, oh my gosh, my kid checks 5 of those boxes. You're right, he is the next school shooter. She is the next school shooter. Not at all. Your kid could check a lot of those boxes and be perfectly fine and well-adjusted and live a productive life. So please don't anyone walk away. There is no formula to predict these things. There's only things to be aware of and to maybe question if your gut's feeling a little off. So, one of the pieces is concerning communications. This is kind of a list. It's just a screenshot out of the actual report that, again, is public. Just Google Secret Service averted attacks, and you can read the 80 or so pages for yourself. But that interest in violence, hate speech, conversations about suicide, self-harm, homicidal thoughts, interest in weapons, sometimes to the extreme, sometimes not. Some of it seems pretty typical because some families go hunting and some families go and do, they talk about weapons, they have military histories, whatever. And that can be okay, or it can. Threats to others, and then substance abuse, again, is a big concerning, talking a lot about drugs with peers, especially. So then here's the piece that, again, just to kind of pay attention to, is that of the averted attackers, when they were able to get a lot of information, almost all of them had experienced some type of stressor prior to the attack, within the couple years prior to the attack. Of attackers, those who completed, their statistic is actually 100%. And many had multiple of these boxes to check off: family stressors, social stressors, academic stressors, trouble with the law, changing schools, etc. All right, but I want you to just look at that top. This is why I'm talking to families tonight. Family stressors. More than half of the plotters experienced stressors related to their families, including parent separation or divorce, substance abuse in the home, violence or abuse, parental incarceration, parental health issues, illness, etc. There's help for those things. That's where you reach out. That's where you can unlock the family secrets and say, my kid probably needs to talk to somebody about these things. Because you're right. What's the statistic? Over half of families are divorced. We're not saying they're all going to turn into school shooters. But it stresses kids out. Get them somebody to talk to. Lots of resources available. So, knowing these things, knowing that we now know, so we can never go back and say, I didn't know that was a concern. I didn't know I should be looking for that. We now know as school professionals, because we are well trained in this information. That's bullet one. What's happening here at Clark, I'll speak to specifically. Lots of training. We go through monthly staff meetings, and there's always some type of safety update training, and then I'll talk a little bit about threat assessment teams, and we have lots of online opportunities. Several of our staff members went through the 3-hour Secret Service training that a lot of this information came from. We do drills every month. They are required by the state. But I will tell you, just today, our panic alarm button system, we have wireless, that if there's an emergency, click a button, pull the thing, sheriff's office is notified, bells, whistles, all of that goes off, right? That's something that's new, required by law. We are actually a year ahead in getting it installed in the school. The school district has them also. But we drill on it using the actual system. So the sheriff's office remembers our buttons on that wall, and they can time out things, etc. So the company today, I was talking to them about something else, and he said, you know, we're in 10 states, and you're the only school that asks us to drill with you regularly, which is yay on us, but makes me a little nervous. But we go through regular drills. This year's drills have been a little wonky because of the word I said I wouldn't say, because we're trying not to have groups of children huddled under desks or crowded in this room back here that's really super safe and nobody even knows it's a big old room back there. Yeah, don't tell any of the shooters that they can find us now. But anyway, we go through a lot of drills, and you'll see as things start to go back to, quote, normal, that we are able to do a little bit more of the active drilling. We do have one coming up at the end of this month, and usually when we do anything more than kind of like a fire drill evacuation, which is, you know, one countermeasure if there were an active shooter is to evacuate quickly. But I'll send home an email just to say, hey, we did this today, in case anybody sees a whole bunch of cop cars pull in. Because a lot of times they like to train their other officers on seeing what we do here. So it's great. Keyless entry, we talk about orientation. That's what those ID cards are. Again, when we're locked out or locked down, we turn those off. So if somebody doesn't, you know, grab Sarah and Elizabeth and say, hey, let me in the building with your key. Sarah and Elizabeth can sit there with their key all day, and if we're on a lockout, they're not getting in with that key. So that's why it's so important. If those IDs are misplaced, lost, destroyed, etc., it's reported to Ms. Jones. Raptor, you know, when you come in during the school day, everybody's license being scanned. We also have a way, if there's somebody to be concerned about that maybe doesn't have a criminal record but really shouldn't be on this campus, and law enforcement has said, hey, they shouldn't be on this campus, we can punch it into Raptor, that if they ever show up and we scan their ID, it pops up and says, no, 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 have law enforcement come and take them away. Our officers are armed. So Officer Williams is back here with us this evening. They have gone through, now I'll tell you, we have 3. They have all gone through Guardian training, but they're all also retired law enforcement. So they did this for a living for a really long time, until just a year or 2 ago for many of them. But they went through additional training as a Guardian. And Officer Williams can tell you that what they did in that training is very different than what I even assumed and thought of when I heard about the Guardian program. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible idea. It's intense, and it's more than they get sometimes as reminders in the sheriff's office, Stewart Police, etc. Like, it's very intense training, so I won't go deep into that because I know I'm using up my time. And then the last piece is something, again, required by statute. They're called threat assessment teams. So there's a group made up of at least one mental health professional or counseling professional, at least one administrator, law enforcement, and with us we have the sheriff's office, who has a representative on that team with us, as well as our officers that are here the whole school day, or when there's students on campus, like tonight, and instructional staff. So we have a team that meets every month, and we talk about any concerns that might be, or little things here and there. But if there was ever a situation where, like our young lady, Nicole, at the beginning, when her dad comes, we're calling everybody in immediately to convene a threat assessment. And that's what would happen, is to look at and say, hey, what is the threat and what do we need to do? So I just want to talk a little bit more in depth about threat assessment, because I don't want anyone to freak out over like, oh my gosh, they have threat assessments every month. It's truly to figure out why a student is acting different, out of the ordinary, etc., and see what we can do to intervene, again, so that we can prevent it to escalating to a point where a student feels like they need to carry out some type of offense against the school or a person at the school. So we have a lot of things we do just naturally as being who schools are and what we do. It's not just about academics in schools, it's about that social emotional learning, it's about building relationships, because that's truly that prevention piece. It's comprehensive. Starting at the bottom, every student is a part of preventing a shooting, just by being a student, because we have discipline systems in place. We have positive behavior support systems in place where we're recognizing as often as we can those things that are going right, the things that are doing well, giving that attention where attention needs to be spent for the majority of students on what's going right. Educating when we're finding out that there's kids not acting quite right. Our whole culture of kindness program, and kind of, it's not even a program, just the culture of kindness, SSA, or Safe School Ambassadors just did a day to celebrate kindness. That was a result of some kids were getting kind of nasty, just getting kind of rude to one another a few years ago, and our student government said, not cool, that's not what we do at Clark. And so they started this big campaign to basically say, we need to focus on positive and we need to get students to start acting positive and focused. So that's where that kind of came from. So all of that type of stuff is what is for all. We do have some students who are at risk. They have some problem behaviors. They have more going on. So there's ways to work with them through group, through counseling, through mentoring, through academic support. Sometimes it's just frustration with academics. And then if needed, other evaluation and services. And then of course the top tier is more intensive stuff, that more intensive counseling. Maybe they have, maybe this just isn't the right setting for them. Okay, so that's where that top level. But this is all in a way to prevent tragedy from happening. So I will fly through. There were 10 findings that came out of this, very concise, bulleted. First being, targeted school violence is preventable if communities can identify warning signs and intervene. Here we are. Step 1, working on that prevention so that because your awareness was raised. Intervening with students before law enforcement gets involved. What can we do before it becomes a legal issue? Again, those grievances. So how do we do that tier 1, that lowest level of making sure that kids are being okay with each other, helping them to be, as I say, good humans, contributing members of society in positive ways at school and the larger world so that they're not looking at grievances. Students are best positioned to be able to say, hey, there's something going on. That's what the Safe School Ambassadors program is a result of, and we actually, I think, have a couple ambassadors in the room. Because peer-to-peer is the best way you're going to prevent school violence. They hear, they see, they know what nobody else at the school does. Parents and families recognizing those concerning behaviors. SROs, again, having a law enforcement quick response is important, although in attacks, very rarely is it law enforcement that ends the attack. A lot of times before they even get to campus, the attack is ended. Just straight kicking a kid out of school doesn't stop attacks. They come back. That interest in violent, hate-filled topics, etc. Columbine is a huge factor. When I tell you the fan clubs that exist and the code names and to this day, and these kids that are obsessed with this weren't even born anywhere near Columbine time, but it's a big, massive red flag, that obsession with Columbine. April's a big day. Why? Columbine. So April is actually the most targeted month. So for us, law enforcement's always on alert in schools during April. You know, that's just unfortunately where the bulk of the attacks are planned or occurred. And then one piece that I'll throw from Department of Ed training, we also have to be very careful here in Florida because of Stoneman Douglas. So Colorado ranks the absolute highest for attempted attacks and plans, etc., because of the copycat factor. Virginia is next because of the Virginia Tech shootings, and so now all of Florida knows we have to be very, very, very on high alert because of Stoneman Douglas, because we have a famous, infamous attack. And again, talking about the access to weapons at home. Yes. Just a quick stat on that. 7 cases, the plotters acquired secured firearms because they were given access to the safe. Others pried the safe open, found the key, or stole them when they were left out. So what do we need to walk away from tonight? If nothing else, be aware. Be aware of what your child's doing. It's our job as a parent to know what's happening online, in person. Don't tell them they get all their privacy and et cetera, et cetera. When they grow up, they can have all the privacy they want. But when they're under your roof, you have a right to those laptops, those cell phones, what's going on, what's happening, knowing who their friends are, etc. I know the kids that are in the room are cursing me in their heads, and that's okay. Big thing, if it's important to them, it needs to be important to you. So back to those grievances, a good chunk of them were romantic relationships gone bad. And so ex-boyfriend was coming to get ex-girlfriend, or her friends, or reverse roles. Although it's typically, again, more common to have male attackers or plotters. So how many of us blow off our crying teen whose boyfriend just dumped them or whose girlfriend just dumped them, and we're like, yeah, you're fine, lots of fish in the sea, right? But it's important to them, and they're gonna communicate how important it is. So if you blow them off and you don't give them a little bit of acknowledgement of their feelings are real, things can escalate, because they're going to get that attention where they need to and however they need to. ACEs, those are all those stressors. Adverse childhood experiences is a fancy name. That's, again, another 40-hour training we could do together. But get help for them. Don't be ashamed. Don't be too proud to ask. You know, worst thing is the kid says, cool, they meet with a therapist, they have some good chats, and everybody feels good and everything's great. But if you don't give them that opportunity, things could go wrong. And then again, please, 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 even if you think you have your weapons well secured, etc., and I'm not telling you, you are not allowed to have guns in your home. I'm not saying any of that. We're not going down that road. But I can tell you that of these plotters, of 67 plotters, 70% of them blatantly either had the weapons set aside somewhere that were found, so they got a hold of them, or when asked, how are you going to get it, we're able to go and do it. So, please take that for what it's worth. And then communicate concerns. Whether you want to reach out to us in person, whether you reach out to law enforcement, again, they are more than happy to not try to get your kid in trouble, but to hear and say, yeah, you probably want to be watching this, etc. We can get you resources, and if you don't want to, because you're like, nah, I still don't want to put my kid's name out there, this is the Statewide Reporting App. Most states now have them. Fortify Florida, there's posters all over, it's links on all of our kids' laptops. It is anonymous, because we actually had a report of concern about self-harm of a student. To this day, we'll never know who put that report in, nor anybody who got the report from the state, but they were able to pinpoint and notify us that there was a concern so that law enforcement could follow up and check on them. So that's definitely a great app. With that, like I said, I know it's a ton of information, but if you have questions, again, for the sake of time, I will be hanging around for the student performances. My goal is to be here for the whole thing, that you can snag me at the end. But otherwise, always shoot me an email, give me a call, if you have other questions, things that you want to hear about, know about. We want your kids to be safe. We want everyone here to be safe. It takes the whole team. We have great communication 98% of the time. It's surely not perfect, but we are here for you. Reach out, ask questions, because we're all here to try to keep kids safe. And learning, of course, but that's not tonight's focus. So, with that, I appreciate your time. I did do it in 30 minutes. I was going to try to cut it lower, but thank you.